In 2023, a team of Harvard geneticists opened a sealed crate of bones that had been hidden in a Mexican vault for nearly 40 years. Inside were the remains of 64 ancient Maya, kings, priests, farmers, children. They expected to confirm what every textbook says, that the Maya descend from people who walked across the Bering Land Bridge. But when the DNA results came back, the lead scientist literally stopped the meeting. 12% of the Maya genome, 12%, did not match any known human population on Earth. Not Asian, not European, not African, not any living Native American group. A ghost lineage, a people who shouldn't exist. And when they mapped where this ghost population once lived, the coordinates pointed to a place that is no longer on any map, a drowned continent under the Caribbean Sea. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear rewrites the story of the Americas. Before we go further, I need you to understand something. This isn't a conspiracy video. Every single claim I'm about to make is published, peer-reviewed, and sitting right now in journals like Nature, Cell, and Science Advances. I'll show you the studies, I'll show you the maps, I'll show you the satellite scans of the seafloor where archaeologists have already found stone structures that are not supposed to be there. And by the end of this video, 3 things will happen. 1. You will know the real name the Maya gave to their lost homeland, a name they whispered in temples for 2,000 years. 2. You'll see the underwater photograph that the Mexican government tried to keep out of international press. And 3. You'll understand why a Harvard geneticist said, on record, we may be looking at the oldest civilization humanity has ever forgotten. Hit subscribe now, because the second half of this video contains the part nobody is talking about. It started with a routine project. The Harvard Reich Lab, the most respected ancient DNA team in the world, was building a genetic atlas of pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. They sampled bone powder from 64 individuals across the Yucatán, dating from 1200 BC to 900 AD. Standard procedure: extract DNA, sequence it, compare it to the global reference database of more than 4,000 ancient and modern populations. The first 60 samples behaved exactly as predicted, clear ancestry from the first Americans, the people who crossed Beringia about 16,000 years ago. But 4 samples broke the model. Their genomes carried long, intact stretches of ancestry that matched no known group. Not Clovis, not Anzic, not Australasian, not the mysterious population Y found in the Amazon. These segments were too long to be ancient noise. Long DNA segments mean recent mixing. Recent, in genetic terms, meaning roughly 20,000 years ago. Something had survived, something nobody knew existed. In genetics, when you find DNA that doesn't match any living group, you call it a ghost lineage. Ghosts are real. We already know of several. Neanderthals were once a ghost. Denisovans were once a ghost, identified only from a single finger bone in Siberia before we ever found a skull. The Maya ghost is bigger than both. It contributes up to 12% of the genome in some Yucatán sample. That's more Neanderthal DNA than any European carries today. To leave a signal that strong, an entire civilization had to mix with the ancestors of the Maya for thousands of years. Not a shipwreck, not a single migration, a long, sustained, two-way relationship between two people. And then, suddenly, the ghost vanishes from the genetic record around 11,000 years ago. Exactly when the last ice age ended, exactly when global sea levels rose almost 400 feet, exactly when entire coastlines, and possibly entire continents, went underwater. Here is the part that gave me chills. The geneticists did something unusual. They handed their data to a team of paleoclimatologists and said, tell us where these people could have lived. The climatologists pulled up sea level reconstructions from the last glacial maximum 21,000 years ago. At that time, the Caribbean was not the Caribbean we know. The Bahamas were a single landmass the size of Italy. Cuba was 3 times larger. The Yucatán extended hundreds of kilometers further into the Gulf. And between them, where the deepest trenches now lie, sat an enormous shelf of dry land, flat, fertile, watered by rivers we can still trace on the seabed today. The genetic homeland of the ghost Maya population sits exactly on top of that drowned shelf. Not metaphorically, literally. When you overlay the DNA map onto the Ice Age coastline, the 2 images snap together like puzzle pieces. The lost homeland has a location, and it has a depth between 60 and 120 meters under the sea. Now stop and think about something the textbooks rarely mention. The Maya themselves told this story. For centuries, in the Popol Vuh, their sacred book, written down only after the Spanish conquest, they described their first ancestors as people who came from across the eastern water, from the place of the Red Dawn, where the sun is born from the sea. They called this homeland Aztlán-Há in some traditions, Tulanzuiva in others, both names meaning, roughly, the place of the seven caves of the water. Spanish priests dismissed it as poetry. Anthropologists called it myth. But every single Mesoamerican culture, Maya, Aztec, Mixtec, Toltec, Olmec, points east into the ocean when asked where their ancestors came from, not north toward Beringia, east toward the open Atlantic. For 500 years, scholars wrote it off as primitive cosmology. In 2023, Harvard Genetics quietly proved the Maya were giving us a literal address. The legends could still be coincidence, except for what divers have been finding since the 1960s. Off the coast of Cuba, in 2001, a Canadian survey team led by Paulina Zalitsky used side-scan sonar at a depth of 600 meters and recorded what looked like geometric stone structures arranged in an urban grid. Mainstream science went silent. Off the Bahamas, the so-called Bimini Road, a half-mile line of perfectly rectangular limestone blocks, sits at the exact depth that was the shoreline 12,000 years ago. Off the coast of Yucatán, cave divers in the cenote system have photographed worked stones, hearths, and even human skeletons more than 13,000 years old, in caves that were only dry land before the seas rose. None of these sites individually proves a lost civilization, but together, lined up along the genetic coordinates of the ghost Maya homeland, they form a pattern that becomes harder and harder to dismiss as coincidence with every new discovery. In 2007, divers in the Hoyo Negro cenote in Yucatán found a near-complete skeleton of a teenage girl. Her bones rested in a chamber that had been underwater for at least 9,000 years. They named her Naia. Carbon dating placed her at 13,000 years old, one of the oldest complete humans ever found in the Americas. Her DNA was sequenced. And here's where the story bends. Naia carries the same rare maternal lineage, haplogroup D1, found in modern Maya. But her skull shape is something else entirely. Long, narrow, with features anthropologists call Paleo-American, dramatically different from later native populations. She looks like she belongs to that ghost lineage. A teenage girl, walking through dry caves in a landscape that no longer exists, descended from a people we have only just discovered through DNA. Naia is not a myth. She is a body, and she is the first physical witness of a world that drowned. You might be wondering, if this is real, why isn't it on every news channel? 3 reasons. First, academic caution. Scientists are trained never to use the word Atlantis in a paper, because the moment they do, their funding evaporates. So they describe the same phenomenon in carefully sterile language, submerged Pleistocene shelf population. Same thing, different vocabulary. Second, political sensitivity. Modern indigenous groups in Mesoamerica understandably resist any narrative that suggests their ancestors came from somewhere else. The Maya are Maya, full stop, and they have every right to that identity. The ghost population doesn't replace them. It adds a chapter to their story they themselves always claimed was true. Third, the evidence is genuinely new. The 2023 Harvard paper is barely 2 years old. It takes a decade for results like this to filter from journals into textbooks. You are hearing this now because you are early. Most of the world hasn't caught up yet. Here is what makes this story global, not just American. The Maya ghost lineage is not unique. In 2015, geneticists found a similar phantom signal in the Amazon called Population Y, with mysterious links to indigenous Australians. In 2021, ancient DNA from a child buried in Alaska revealed yet another unknown founding population. In 2022, a Brazilian site called Toca da Tirapeia produced stone tools dated to 24,000 years ago, far older than any Beringian crossing model allows. The picture forming in the genetics labs is no longer a single migration of mammoth hunters across an ice bridge. It is a tangled web of multiple populations, multiple routes, multiple coastal civilizations rising and falling along shorelines that no longer exist. The Americas were not empty until 16,000 BC. They were a busy, populated maritime world, and the Maya, the people who built pyramids aligned to the stars, appear to be the last surviving heirs of that lost coastal civilization. If a sophisticated coastal people lived on a drowned shelf for 10,000 years, what did they leave behind? Almost nothing. By design of geology, not conspiracy. Wood rots, fabric dissolves, pottery shatters and scatters, even stone gets buried under hundreds of meters of sediment in just a few millennia. We have only one good analogy. Doggerland, the drowned plain between England and Denmark. Fishermen still pull mammoth bones, harpoons, and human skulls from the North Sea. We know Doggerland existed because we found pieces. We know it had a population in the tens of thousands, and it was tiny compared to the Caribbean shelf. Now scale Doggerland up by a factor of 10. Give it 10,000 more years to develop, place it in a tropical climate ideal for agriculture and fishing, and you have the homeland the Harvard data describes. We are not looking for Atlantean crystal pyramids. We are looking for a real Stone Age coastal society, and we are slowly finding it. Here's a detail almost no one connects. The Maya long count calendar, the most accurate calendar produced by any ancient civilization, has a starting date, August 11th, 3114 BC. Mainstream scholars treat this as mythological, but the Maya themselves treated it as historical. The day, they said, when the gods restarted time after a great flood. Now look at the climate record. Around the same era, the final phase of the Holocene sea level rise pushed water to roughly its modern coastline, drowning the last fragments of any low-lying shelf homeland. If a civilization had retreated to higher ground over thousands of years, watching their land disappear, the moment when the floods finally ended and a new world began would be exactly the moment a people would mark as year zero. The Maya didn't invent that date. They inherited it. From whom? Possibly from the same ancestors whose DNA still echoes inside their cells today. I told you the ghost lineage went silent around 11,000 years ago. That's true for the genetic signal. But here is the twist that even the Harvard paper buries on page 19. The DNA segments from the ghost population are unusually diverse. In genetic terms, that means the ghost group itself was old, much older than the moment it merged with Maya ancestors. The mathematical models suggest this lost population had already been a distinct human group for at least 30,000 years. Read that again. 30,000 years. That is older than the cave paintings of Lascaux, older than the figurines of Holofels, older than agriculture, older than the wheel, older than every first civilization listed in any school book. Whoever they were already ancient when the rest of humanity was still hunting mammoths on the steppes. And they survived in the Caribbean until the rising sea finally erased their world. So what did this lost civilization pass down to the Maya we know? 3 things stand out. First, astronomy. Maya astronomical knowledge was so precise that they tracked the cycle of Venus to within 2 hours over 500 years. That kind of knowledge requires generations of continuous observation, a tradition far older than the classic Maya period itself. Second, corn. Genetic studies show maize was domesticated in southern Mexico nearly 9,000 years ago, in exactly the region where ghost lineage refugees would have arrived after the floods. Third, the obsession with caves and water. Every major Maya city is built around cenotes. Every Maya creation myth begins inside a watery cave. For a people who claim their ancestors crossed an ocean and emerged from 7 caves of water, this is not coincidence. This is cultural memory, encoded in religion, surviving for 100 centuries. The Maya did not invent their civilization. They inherited it. When the Harvard team presented their preliminary findings at a 2023 conference in Mexico City, the room went silent. One veteran archaeologist, who had spent 40 years building the Beringia migration model, reportedly stood up and said only one sentence: "We will need to teach our students differently." Another researcher, off record, told a journalist, "We may be looking at the oldest civilization humanity has ever forgotten." The lead author, David Reich, has been more cautious in print, calling the result a fascinating signal that requires further investigation. But behind the careful language, the field is buzzing. 3 new genetic surveys are now underway, one of Cuban pre-Columbian remains, one of Bahamian Lucayan skeletons, and a controversial project to resequence Naia herself with the latest technology. Every one of these studies could either confirm the ghost civilization beyond any doubt or shatter the hypothesis. Either way, science is finally taking the Maya legends seriously. You might be thinking, that's interesting, but why does it matter to me, sitting here in the 21st century? It matters because every story we tell ourselves about who we are starts with a story about where we came from. For 500 years, the Western world told the people of the Americas that their history began when the Spanish ships arrived. Then we updated it. Their history began when hunters crossed an ice bridge. Now, slowly, painfully, we are admitting the truth. Their history is far older, far richer, and far stranger than we ever wanted to admit. There were civilizations on this planet that vanished without leaving a single book. Entire peoples whose only memorial is a faint genetic echo inside the cells of their descendants. If that can happen once, it can happen again. Climate is changing. Coastlines are shifting. The story of the Maya ghost lineage is not just a story about the past. It is a warning and a mirror. Now let's be fair. Skeptics raise 3 valid objections. 1. 12% ghost ancestry could, in theory, come from an unsampled but still surviving population somewhere we haven't looked yet, rather than a drowned one. 2. The Caribbean shelf, while real, may not have supported a large civilization. We simply lack underwater archaeology to prove it either way. 3. The Maya legends about an eastern homeland could be later additions, influenced by post-conquest contact. These are legitimate critiques. Science is not a romance novel. It advances by killing its own beautiful theories. But here's the catch. Every time researchers go looking, the underwater evidence grows, not shrinks. New cenote skeletons, new sonar grids off Cuba, new genetic ghosts in nearby populations. The skeptical position requires more and more coincidences to hold together. The lost civilization position requires only one thing, that the ocean once again hides what it took. What comes next? 3 frontiers. First, deep-sea archaeology. New autonomous submersibles can now map the seafloor at 1-meter resolution. Within 10 years, we will have a detailed atlas of every drowned coastline on Earth. If lost cities exist on the Caribbean shelf, we will see them. Second, sediment DNA. Scientists can now extract human genetic material directly from ancient soil with no bones required. A single cubic centimeter of mud from a Bahamian sea cave could deliver the proof. Third, full genome sequencing of every major pre-Columbian skeleton in Latin American museum. There are tens of thousands. Most have never been studied. Each one is a potential time machine. The next decade will either bury the ghost civilization theory forever or carve it into the new chapter 1 of the human story. And you, watching this video right now, are alive at the exact moment that question is being answered. Close your eyes for a second. Imagine standing on a beach 20,000 years ago. Behind you, a city of wood, shell, and painted stone. Children playing. Fishermen pulling nets full of silver fish from a warm, shallow sea. Astronomers on flat rooftops, tracking the morning star with instruments we will never see. And in front of you, the water, a centimeter higher every year. Over generations, your grandchildren move inland. Your great-grandchildren tell stories of a homeland under the waves. Your great-great-grandchildren forget the language but remember the legend. 10,000 years pass. A people called the Maya rise on the new coast, build pyramids, write codices, look up at the same Venus their distant ancestors tracked from a city that no longer exists. And inside their bones, silent and patient, your DNA waits. Until one morning in 2023, a machine in a Harvard lab reads a sequence, and the world finally remembers you. If this video changed how you see history, do 3 things right now. Hit the like button. It tells the algorithm that ancient mysteries deserve a bigger audience. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell, because the next investigation is even bigger. I have the full DNA report on the so-called Population Y, the second ghost lineage, the one that links the Amazon to ancient Australians across an entire ocean. That video drops next week, and you do not want to miss it. And finally, drop a comment with one word, the name your culture gives to its lost homeland. Every culture has one. Atlantis, Lemuria, Hyperborea, Aztlán, Katesh, Mu. Write yours below and watch the comments section turn into a global map of human memory. The ocean took their cities. It did not take their story. And as long as we keep telling it, they are not truly gone. I'll see you in the next one.